This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, they've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. They work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join their mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years. After spending roughly a month in a hotel, 64-year-old Debra Griego is back out on the streets. Albuquerque Journal reporter Noah Alcala Bach has been chronicling her search for housing and joins me to discuss the second installment of his series. And President Joe Biden has extended temporary protected status for approximately 1 million migrants, but what does that mean for New Mexico? Plus, Journal reporter Nakayla McClelland stops by to discuss two young boys from Rio Rancho suffering from muscular dystrophy, receiving possible life-changing care from UNM Hospital. It's Monday, January 13th, 2025. I'm Gino Gutierrez, and I'll have more on those stories plus a look at the Journal's other headlines and Albuquerque's weather forecast coming up on the Leading News. In the second part of the ongoing series following 64-year-old Debra Griego, who is currently unhoused, Albuquerque Journal reporter Noah Alcala Bach follows her after she leaves a hotel she has been staying at and returns to the streets. Noah joins me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gino.
So Noah, this second part following Debra's story, can you tell our readers a little bit about what they can expect?
Yeah, so she still doesn't have housing, as the headline will indicate, but she has gotten a lot of help. You know, her story ran as the front page of the Sunday Journal on December 9th, and, you know, just an outpouring of support, you know, and it's interesting as a newspaper because there's only so much we can do on ethical lines as journalists, you know, because we're spectators, but we connected all those people with shelters and other ways they can help her. And so, yeah, outpouring of support. There was one reader in particular named Bonnie and her husband Billy, and they paid for Griego to have a storage unit for a few months. They ended up paying for a hotel stay, which she didn't ask them to do. I mean, she didn't ask them to do any of it, but so we have that. And, you know, she stayed there for about 3 weeks, got another golden opportunity. Well, she got another good opportunity and stayed a night in a safe room in a shelter of sorts, but she ultimately decided to return back to the streets. And yeah, there's some new, you know, for some kind of behind the curtain, we decided to kind of bookmark the story with where she was at last Friday, but there's some new developments we're working on with the third story, and so yeah.
And Noah, for our listeners who may not have read the first part of Debra's story, she has a lot of issues going on outside of being unhoused, some health issues, some mental health issues. Can you kind of explain a little bit of her backstory for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, like so many people on the streets, Debra suffers from mental health issues. And like so many people on the streets, you know, it's hard for her to get her medication. It's tough. You know, it's a tough environment. And I think that's something that we saw a lot when we wrote that first story, you know, these kind of highs and lows mentally. But she was always very optimistic. If you read the first story, you know, we just followed her nightly routine. She'd go to a Love's and cook food for her and her dog. You know, really, you can just tell that she had 3 children, and you could just tell a lot of her maternal energy is being directed towards this completely spoiled little terrier that she has named Louie. And so, you know, she just kept strong, held strong for that time. And in our first story, we have a lot of her talking about being an advocate for other people in the streets. And that was like very clear in the interactions we would have, or we would witness her having. So yeah. And I think something that the second story really highlights is when there is a roof over her head, Debra is, you know, she's able to kind of thrive, you know, the way that you and I would guess most people listening to this podcast can. You know, I think it really just goes to show the impact that shelter can have on somebody's day-to-day life, even somebody who is kind of, you know, hey, she's spent a year on the streets, who knows how to handle experiencing homelessness.
And Noah, you just mentioned that Debra back out on the streets as of last Friday. How is her search for housing going?
I will let our readers find that out in the next installment of the series, but I will say she is in a good place, and there are resources around her. She's on track to finding housing.
So we will keep our eyes out for the third installment of this series following 64-year-old Debra Griego. Albuquerque Journal reporter Noah Alcala Bach with the latest. Thank you so much, Noah.
Thank you.
President Joe Biden has announced that he's extending temporary protected status for 18 months for millions of migrants in the United States. But what impact will this have on New Mexico? For that answer, we now turn to Albuquerque Journal reporter Gillian Barkhurst, who's been following this issue. Gillian, what will the impact to New Mexico be?
So the biggest group of migrants in New Mexico are from Mexico, but we do have a sizable population of Venezuelan and El Salvadorian immigrants, which are among the groups that are protected in this new extension. So that's something that is going to benefit New Mexicans and people who are seeking shelter here.
And Gillian, you got a chance to speak to a couple of immigrant community leaders right here in Albuquerque. What did they tell you about this announcement?
Yeah, so I spoke to a woman who's an immigrant herself. She works for the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Village of Albuquerque. And when I told her, she was about to board a plane, and she just said she was so relieved, and that it was kind of like a weight off of her shoulders, because she works a lot with African refugees, and Sudan is one of those groups that is protected. And then I also spoke with the ACLU of New Mexico. I also spoke with some other advocates and legal experts, and they said that while this is definitely a welcome change to them, they're worried about what President-elect Trump might do.
And Gillian, that really leads me into my next question. President Biden announced this extension, but his time in office is coming to an end, and President-elect Trump is ready to assume the presidency. So what does this extension really mean in the grand scheme of things?
Well, it seems like it's a lot of people are saying it's a welcome step, but it's uncertain if he's going to just walk this right back, because he has already said in October in an interview, he said that he was going to take DPS protections away from Haitian immigrants in Springville, Ohio. So it's kind of uncertain what he's going to do. We have to wait.
But before President Biden's time is up in office, Gillian, he's really facing a lot of pressure from those who say that he should be doing more to extend protections for these vulnerable groups. People like Senator Ben Ray Lujan. What is the senator asking him to do?
Yeah, so he was asking for expanded protections for people from Ecuador, because since last year they've been in this internal fight, and the government there has been accused of human rights violations, and there's lots of people fleeing that country. So Ben Ray Lujan was asking for more protections for Ecuadorians.
So, Gillian, we'll just have to wait and see what happens when President-elect Trump takes office and what happens to the extended protections. But thank you so much for sharing the latest with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. When the Haslam family discovered that both of their young sons had muscular dystrophy, the diagnosis came as a shock. But what also came was hope, courtesy of the UNM hospital. With more on what that hope was, I'm now joined by Albuquerque Journal reporter Nakayla McClelland, who followed their story. Nakayla, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So Nakayla, the Haslam brothers, ages 10 and 12 now, both young boys diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. What can you tell us about their background?
Yeah, so these two brothers grew up in Rio Rancho, and at a young age, the oldest of the two kind of had some issues walking and moving. And the mother, who was an occupational therapist, she actually had a client who was like, hey, I have muscular dystrophy, and I kind of think your son does too. Well, it's a genetic disease, so when one has it, it's likely that another does. And they got the first brother tested, he had it, and they realized that the second brother also had it.
And Nakayla, you just mentioned it, and for our audience listening, muscular dystrophy is a genetic condition that can cause muscle weakness, can also lead to heart and lung failure as well. So I would imagine for these parents to receive that news that both of their young sons were affected by this was probably pretty devastating. But they also received some hope as well, because both boys recently received a gene therapy treatment from the University of New Mexico Hospital. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the FDA recently approved a medicine that was used for younger children, because at this time, gene therapy was only really used for older adults and was still kind of in the process. So New Mexico recently passed it as well, and UNM has been working with these two boys for a while. So when they found out that the medicine was approved, they realized that these two were great candidates to try it for the first time and be the first people in New Mexico to receive the treatment.
And Nakayla, these boys receiving this gene therapy treatment isn't even the most remarkable part of their story. The treatment cost $3 million for a one-time therapy. UNMH gave each boy a therapy treatment, so a total of $6 million, and they gave it to him for free.
Yep. So after finding out that that medicine was going to be approved and how much it costed, UNM kind of realized, they've been following these two brothers and their health history for a while. So if you're going to try a medicine like this in the state for the first time, you want to kind of have an idea of who your clients are. And so they worked out well, and UNM went through all of the stuff that they needed to go to and decided, hey, we're going to use this and we're going to let you guys use this for free, because no one can really afford $6 million for a one-time treatment.
And Nakayla, this gene therapy treatment that these boys received, what are they hoping it does for them?
So muscular dystrophy has right now a really low life expectancy rate. The parents and the boys were really lucky and they caught it early. So getting this medication can help increase their life expectancy. Right now, people with muscular dystrophy are expected to live until about their 30s. And this is, they're not able to walk. They're just living. And so with this medication, the boys might be able to walk a little bit longer. They might be able to climb upstairs. They might be able to run a little bit. It's a trial test. So they don't know exactly how much it'll help, but they're hoping that it'll give the boys more control of their motor skills and will allow them to live a little bit longer.
And the boys received these gene therapy treatments back in September, Nakayla. How are they recovering and how are they doing?
Yeah, so initially people can get flu-like symptoms and they can feel kind of nauseous, a little sick and weak. And so both of the brothers dealt with that for a little bit. The youngest of the two actually had to go back to the hospital a few times and get some steroid infusions just to kind of help kick out that sickness a little bit more. But the further that time goes on, the less likely that it is that they'll continue to get sick. And so both of them are recovered now. The youngest of the two had his last steroid infusion recently, and he's recovering well as well.
So good news to hear that both of these boys are well on the way to recovery and that they received these gene therapy treatments for free. A really remarkable story, Nakayla. Thank you so much for stopping by and telling us about it.
Thanks, Gino.
In other headlines from the newsroom, Republican State Senator Jared Humphrey of Roswell has resigned from the New Mexico House due to health issues. This comes just 2 months after he secured a new term. His departure leaves 2 vacant seats in the 70-member chamber ahead of the January 21st legislative session. Chavez County Commissioners will appoint Humphrey's successor for District 59, while the governor awaits guidance on filling another vacancy in District 6, which was previously held by Representative Alessio Elkhorn. 2 teens, Adrian Torres and Uriel Alonso, face murder and robbery charges after a New Year's Eve botched robbery in Albuquerque that left 15-year-old Manuel Ortega dead. Police allege the pair planned to rob Ortega's brother during a gun sale, leading to a struggle and fatal shooting. Both suspects are now in custody. And the Pueblo of Santa Ana has secured $6.4 million in federal funding to design wildlife crossings along I-25 and US 550, addressing dangerous collisions and helping animals migrate safely. These overpasses and underpasses will improve traffic safety, preserve wildlife traditions, and connect key habitats, marking a major step in New Mexico's efforts to protect both animals and drivers. Looking for something to do today? Abstract in Albuquerque is taking place at the Outpost Performance Space from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. A plant swap is taking place at the Lost Cultures Tea Bar from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. A free tango class is taking place at Porta El Tango from 6 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. And lastly, you can drop by Bourbon and Boots tonight at 8 p.m. for karaoke. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. There is a chance of snow showers today before 2 p.m. and after 5 p.m., mostly cloudy skies with a high near 40. And then tonight there is a chance of snow showers again before 8 p.m., mostly cloudy skies with a low around 18. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. For the leading news, I'm Gino Gutierrez.